Alright, so we are back. We are playing some Yahenni Undying Partisan, aka the deck that I cannot win with. This is probably the 6th time I've tried recording this video and getting a win, and it has not happened. Looks like we have a reasonable starting hand though, so we're gonna go ahead and keep that. So far, the best game that I've had with Yahenni was the one that I posted a few months back, right around the release of Aether Revolt. And every other game has just been like long and terrible and really frustrating, especially when you're trying to film. Anyway, so taking a look at what Yahenni does, it's 2 colorless and a black for a 2/2 with haste. It says, whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, put a +1/+1 counter on Yahenni, and you may sacrifice another creature to give Yahenni indestructible until end of turn. So we're very much playing an aristocrat-style sacrifice deck. So when you're using things like Bloodghast to make sure that there's always fuel for Yahenni to have indestructible, and then beyond that, we just play a ton of board wipes and hope to blow up all of our opponent's creatures, give Yahenni indestructible, and then swing in with a really big Yahenni. We have a Druid of the Cowl coming down for the Freyalise opponent. So let's take a look at who we're facing. Freyalise Llanowar's Fury is 3 and 2 green for a Planeswalker that can be your commander. Its +2 is create a 1/1 green elf druid that taps for a green mana. Its -2 is to destroy target artifact or enchantment, and its -6 is draw a card for each green creature you control. So pretty solid Planeswalker commander. The ability to remove artifacts and enchantments is really powerful. Probably going to make our Gauntlet of Power almost completely useless. So there's that. Kasali Pridemage coming down for the Marith opponent. So our next opponent, by the way, is Marith Will of the Wild, a red, a green, and a white. Marith Will of the Wild enters the battlefield with a number of +1/+1 counters equal to the amount of mana spent to cast it. So it'll get bigger as the game goes along and it keeps getting recast from the command zone. Pay X, remove X +1/+1 counters from Marin, and X cannot be 0, and choose one of the following abilities. Put X counters on a creature, deal X damage to target creature or player, or create an XX green elemental creature token. So Marith, usually some combination of tokens and counters. Doubling Season is just a perfect card with Marith. Marith can do some pretty crazy things. Having that much utility to be able to target down or make threats is really powerful. So I think it's actually banned in Dual Commander if I'm not mistaken. And then finally we have Gave, Guru of Spores, is 2, a black, a green, and a white. Comes into play with 5 +1/+1 counters. Pay 1, remove a counter, create a 1/1 green Saproling token. Pay 1, sacrifice a creature, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. So Gave also going to be a tokens and counters style of deck. So Marith and Gave will probably end up running a lot of similar cards. Back to our turn, we draw a Strip Mine. Not something we need right now, but it could be useful in the future. Right now, I'm just going to play this Swamp and play our Bloodghast. Gave with a huge turn 1 and 2, by the way. They started with a Mana Crypt and a Mox Diamond, and they have their Gave down on turn 2. So that's pretty good. Izuri Renegade Leader coming in for the Freyalise opponent. The way that Freyalise deck's usually an Elf Tribal overrun deck, so we'll need to be careful of that. Marith cracks a fetch, gets a Taiga. Marith Will of the Wild coming into play. It's got 3 +1/+1 counters on it. So like I said, having that utility, it does cost them mana to do it, but on their next turn, they could potentially shoot down many of the creatures on board already. Mana Crypt trigger for the Gave. They lose the flip, down to 36. Exploration for the Gave opponent. They may play an additional land each turn. A Karmic Justice for the Gave opponent. Oh boy. We do have Ugin to deal with that, but we are many lands away from Ugin. And a Sensei's Divining Top. We could cast Yahenni this turn, but I don't see a ton of value in that. We basically just need to play a board wipe already. We're at that point of the game and it's turn 3. So we're just going to play our Sensei's Divining Top and take a look at the top 3 cards of our library. Try to set up our next couple of turns. Let's see what's coming. Well, we have a Vampiric Tutor. That is extremely helpful. Jolt539 asks, is MTGO loading weird for you? Yes, it was painfully slow tonight. Okay, so let's see. We're many mana away from the Deathbringer Regent, so put that on the bottom, put the Swamp, and then put the Vampiric Tutor. We will play the Bojuka Bog for little to no value. We'll get all the lands from the Gave opponent. That way we'll have the untapped mana available next turn, and we can start thinking about board wipes. So pass the turn. Can't attack into anyone, profitably anyway. Drove of Elves coming into play. 4 mana, has power and toughness, equal to the number of green permanents you control, and has hexproof. That's pretty good in an elf deck. Fiery Justice for the Marith opponent. Gonna do 5 damage to the Gave Guru of Spores, and target opponent will gain 5 life. So that's definitely a good thing to slow down the Gave opponent a little bit. The Gave opponent jumped out really far ahead with the Mana Crypt and the Mox Diamond. So that'll at least rein this game in just a little bit. Let's see, Marith's going on the attack. They're gonna get an Exalted trigger, and they're coming in at us, but they did give us the life gain, so they put us up to to 45, and they're going to put us back down to 41. So no big deal there. Although that is commander damage, and that cannot be erased. Mana Crypt trigger for the Gave opponent. So the good news is now Gave is down to 2 cards in hand. They can potentially still be good ones, but when you get out to a start like that, you tend to run out of cards very quickly unless you're able to play some card draw. So opponent's just going to recast their Gave. Easy turn for us. We're going to play the Strip Mine, play our commander, and then leave up 1 mana for Vampiric Tutor. Now we get to the point of the game where we can't ever have 6 again, which is very unfortunate. We can attack profitably into the Marith opponent with the Bloodghast, so we'll do that. I doubt that they block and trade with the Kusali Pride Mage because it's really easy to get our Bloodghast back. So get in with the pokes. Opponent goes down to 34, and we will pass our turn. Freyalise coming into play. See what they decide to do. They're going to plus and make a 1/1 green elf that makes mana. And so I talked about this a little bit in the other Yahenni video that I did, is that it's a difficult commander to play in Magic Online because you can never F6 and you just have to always hold up priority. Ooh, good play. So the Marith opponent is going to shoot down our Bloodghast, which is pretty good. Makes it seem like that attack probably wasn't worth it. So we will sacrifice the Bloodghast to Yahenni just to give it indestructible. Probably not going to do a whole lot in this instance because they can just basically do the same thing again next turn, but... And that is the power of Marith. Having the utility to damage creatures or players, or make other creatures all out of 1 card is just really, really powerful. And probably, honestly, a little bit too strong. So opponent's going to ping our Yahenni, and they're going to shoot Yahenni again, so Yahenni's going to go down. Farseek for the Marith opponent. Perhaps attacking the Marith wasn't the greatest plan right there. Definitely seemed to set them off on a bit of a warpath, and took down all of our stuff. And we were actually really well set up to play Vampiric Tutor, sacrifice Bloodghast, into Yahenni and board wipe everything and get a pretty big Yahenni. The question becomes what to do now. There seems to be less of a need for a board wipe now. We still have all the elves floating around, but they haven't been causing us any problems yet. So the other question becomes, do we just try to ramp our way into Ugin? And the answer is, I'm not sure. Unfortunately, Freyalise is going to make our artifacts pretty much useless, so we're probably just going to have to hold those and hope Freyalise gets eliminated from the game at some point. Devoted Druid for the Gave opponent. That seems like it'll probably combo off pretty well. Gave is going to make a Spore token, Saproling token. Looks like they're going to make another token. We're going to fire off our Vampiric Tutor right here just so we can actually F6 for a minute. And right now, I think I want card draw more than I want anything. There are a lot of things on board, but we have a ton of board wipes in this deck. I want to just keep making land drops right now, and we need to draw more to do that. So we're just going to grab Ambition's Cost. We don't quite have the mana for Promise of Power yet, so we know that we can cast the Ambition's Cost, and it'll just give us a couple extra cards to look at, which is going to be really important. Hoping for something like land, card draw spell, board wipe would be a nice draw, or 2 lands and a board wipe would also be a pretty good draw out of that. Ooh, so Swords to Plowshares on the Azuri Renegade Leader. Azuri definitely a powerhouse. Having the ability to basically overrun your creatures multiple times in a turn is really, really strong. Doesn't take all that much to just end the game. So we're going to play Ambition's Cost right here. Hopefully we catch a land. It'd be really sad if we don't. Alright, so we catch a land. Ooh. And the Phyrexian Reclamation is nice. So we're going to play a Swamp. We will get back our Bloodghast and play this Phyrexian Reclamation. It may get shot by the Freyalise, but we'll see what happens. At the very least, it'll give us a few turns to keep Freyalise from ultimating. So another point in which we actually get to F6 for a little while, at the cost of us not having our commander in play. So Freyalise decides to make another elf token. Completely okay with that. Anything that's not blowing up our stuff is just fantastic. And they're going to play a Skull Clamp, so they're about to do a whole lot of card drawing. Farhaven Elf coming down for the Freyalise. Freyalise now at 7 counters, by the way, so hopefully someone can put some damage on it and at least tick it down a little bit. If we draw exactly Mana Crypt, we would have Ugin mana next turn, but I don't think there's any other way in our deck to be able to get that. Kusali Pride Mage decides to blow up the Karmic Justice, so Karmic Justice is going to get a trigger, and Karmic Justice only lands left in play for the Marith opponent, but even blowing up a land is still pretty good. I probably recommend the Opal Palace, personally. Good choice, opponent. Good choice. Opponent also has a Wasteland. Pretty expensive. Also, that'll make us think twice about casting our Cabal Coffers anytime soon. So between Freyalise and this Wasteland, we are locked out of all of our mana doubling pretty good. Hardened Scales for the Marith opponent. Definitely going to work pretty good with Marith. Walking Ballista for the Marith opponent. Also seems pretty good with Hardened Scales. So Walking Ballista comes in with 3 counters, and it's going to shoot down the Gave Guru of Spores. Walking Ballista also decides to shoot one of Freyalise's elves. It's going to float some mana. Unfortunately, our Yahenni isn't on the board for all of this, because that would be fantastic, but very sad that it's not. Opponent loses another mana crypt flip, now down to 31. Yawgmoth's Will, you say? Wow. There's only 2 cards in his graveyard, which is a Swords to Plowshares and a Karmic Justice. So they must really want that Karmic Justice. Also, I hope they don't Swords to Plowshares the Bloodghast. That'd be real bad. Karmic Justice coming back into play. And they Swords to Plowshares are Bloodghast. That makes me very, very sad. Luckily, we do have some backup recursion type creatures in this deck, in Nether Trader and Reassembling Skeleton, but still super annoying. Bloodghast is the one that's least mana intensive to use. So Gave swinging into us with everything they have. Why, I have no idea. As far as I know, we haven't really done anything to Gave, so that seems unnecessary. We go down to 34. Meanwhile, Freyalise is on the verge of ultimating and is at 47 life, and also has a Skull Clamp in play with 6 cards in hand, so Freyalise is in pretty good shape. We're gonna play this Homeward Path. We draw a Sidisi. Sidisi would have been wonderful with that Bloodghast still around, but it is no longer here. Question is what to do this turn. I think we just slam this Kothoped. That way, if anyone wants to mess around with more removal, we just draw a bunch of cards and lose a bunch of life, so our hand will be very, very full. We're gonna set a stop on our upkeep to make sure that we Divining Top on our next upkeep. So Freyalise is gonna ultimate, goes down to 1 loyalty, and I'm gonna draw 2 cards. They must have a really bad hand. If they're ultimating Freyalise and they didn't have more creatures to play first, that seems really suspicious to me. So opponent's gonna Desert Twister our Kothoped. Kind of annoying. No reason to say that we can't just bring it back with the Phyrexian Reclamation. I just don't know that that's a great use of mana just yet. Opponent's going to equip their Skull Clamp. Now has a 2/2. Actually, that set us up into a nice position because now Freyalise is a little ways away from being able to blow up our Gauntlet of Power, so we can actually lay down our Gauntlet of Power this turn, and that'll be nice. Opponent's going to put a counter on Walking Ballista. We'll get 2 from the Hardened Scales. So Walking Ballista back to a 3/3. Very unfortunate that our Kothoped did not survive because we'd be drawing all the cards right now. So that's actually bad. Walking Ballista shoots down the Freyalise, which means that opponent could just recast their Freyalise and shoot our Gauntlet of Power, but paying 5 mana to blow up an artifact is not exactly a great rate. Actually, it'd be 7. Yeah, I think we still might be okay to play the Gauntlet of Power. I mean, if they have literal nothing else, maybe they blow it up, but I think there's a high enough chance that they want to do other things on their turn other than recast Freyalise for 7 and blow up our artifact. So Gave loses another flip, down to 28 life. Eladamri, Lord of Leaves. Oh boy. Other elves have Forest Walk, other elves have Shroud. Doesn't seem like that really belongs in a Gave deck, unless they're focusing on an elf sub-theme, but doesn't really seem to synergize with the commander particularly well. Opponent coming back into us with everything they have. Why the Devoted Druid, I have no idea, but the Saproling, sure, we're just gonna have to take that. Walking Ballista shoots down one of the tokens. So we go down to 31, and we're going to use our Sensei's Divining Top, see what's on top of our deck. Oh, Cabal Coffers, you say? Yeah. And Deathbringer Regent. Deathbringer Regent is a much-needed board wipe right now. So it'll be important that we don't shuffle our library. Man, I really don't want to run the Cabal Coffers into the Wasteland. That would make me very, very sad. So I think we're right here what we're going to do. We're actually going to put the Swamp back on top. We're going to put the Swamp followed by the Deathbringer Regent with Cabal Coffers on the bottom, because I don't want to run the Cabal Coffers into the Wasteland. That would really cripple us pretty bad. And I do want to cast that Deathbringer Regent so that we can wipe the board, and that'll give us a chance to kind of get back into this game a bit. So right now, we draw the Swamp, and we will cast the Gauntlet of Power. Hope that this sticks back to our next turn. Unfortunately, we're shields down while all this is going on, and we are open to our opponents. So Gauntlet of Power, choosing black, and pass the turn. The other reason, too, with the Cabal Coffers is we actually don't have that many swamps in play. That swamp we played was just our 4th swamp, so the Cabal Coffers wouldn't have even been profitable land-wise yet. Gave could drop a Urborg for us. That would be really nice. Then we would get a ton of mana out of the Cabal Coffers, and it may actually be worth using it, even if it's just for that one turn, to get a nice boost of mana. So opponent recasts their Freyalise. I bet they shoot the Gauntlet of Power. They make an elf. Oh my god. Oh, there's a chance we untap with this Gauntlet of Power. That would be wonderful. Harmonize for the Marith opponent. They're going to draw some cards. Mana Crypt for the Marith opponent. And puts another counter on Walking Ballista. We'll get 2 because of the Hardened Scales, and is set up to keep shooting stuff down. Walking Ballista swinging into the Gave, gets in for 3. Alright, end step. Actually, the other thing we could do is we could get Kothoped back, and then play the Deathbringer Regent, and draw a lot of cards. I think we might do that. So get back our Kothoped, go back to our turn, and I'm going to need to count up the mana to do this. So that's 8 mana, 9 mana, 10, 11 mana. We have 11 mana. That's going to be 13, so we would need the Cabal Coffers. What I was hoping to be able to to do, get the Deathbringer Regent, use it as a board wipe with both Kothoped and Yahenni in play, so that way we would draw a whole bunch of cards and Yahenni would get huge. But maybe there's still a way to do it. We would need 16 mana to do that, and 17 to activate our Divining Top. So I think we're gonna have to give up on the Kothoped Dream for now and just cast our Yahenni. Actually, we need to make sure we have enough to do that. 5 plus 7 is 12. So we are going to need our Cabal Coffers. So draw with the Divining Top. It's going to be our Cabal Coffers. We're going to need it. So that's 4. That'd be 8. That's 12. That's 13. That gives us enough. All right, so we have exactly 13. I think I'm going to go with the Kothoped and Deathbringer Regent plan because that'll draw us a million cards. And I like that. I like that idea. So Kothoped coming back into play. And cast the Deathbringer Regent. Ha! Exactly enough mana. Who's got a double count on turns like this where you're trying to go off essentially and make sure you have enough mana? Really disappointing when you miscount. So Walking Ballista is going to shoot down one of the Saprolings. We get to draw with Kothoped. So start the drawing. Walking Ballista is going to shoot us, and Walking Ballista shoots us again. So we're going to get to draw 2 cards out of the deal, and we lose 2 life, and we lose an additional 2 life from the Walking Ballista. Kothoped is also a 7/7 from the Gauntlet of Power, but probably about to die here in a second. We draw Sword of Feast and Famine. Can't wait to get that into play. 3 green opponents? Sounds fantastic. Marith opponent said he didn't read the card right. Thought he could stop me from drawing all the cards, but it is not true. And we draw a bunch of cards! Yay! So everything dies except the Deathbringer Regent. We draw a whole lot of cards. We are definitely going to have to discard the hand size. We're going to discard the creatures first because, well, let's see. Wow, we only drew 2 lands and all of that? That's pretty crazy. We have the ability to get creatures back with the Phyrexian Reclamation, although we do need to be careful of the Freyalies. I'm going to get rid of the Grim Tutor for now. We have Beseech the Queen, pretty much the same thing at this point. Oh, Jesus, we're at 12 cards. Crypt Rats. We'll pull it out of the graveyard if we need to. Grave Pact is really good. We also have Sidisi, so we'll get rid of Beseech the Queen also. Down to 10. Drop a land, 2 cards to go. We'll drop Gilded Lotus, since so far our ramp is pretty good. Our opponents have the tools to remove both Coffers and Gauntlet of Power, but it would be costly for both of them to do that, so we'll just hope that they don't. Man, what's the last cut? I really don't want to get rid of any of these. I guess Divining Top. Divining Top's already done its work, and we have the Promise of Power, so at this point, we're just going to look to trying to keep draw as many cards as possible. 10 lands for Freyalies. They accelerated and have not missed a land drop yet. Ooh, that's a Terastodon. Didn't count on that. That's gonna get us pretty good. I'm gonna guess Cabal Coffers, Reclamation, and Gauntlet of Power? Although Hardened Scales is also a worthy target. Goes for the Mana Crypt. Well, I guess it keeps opponent off their Marith for a little while. But yeah, we lose our Phyrexian Reclamation and the Gauntlet of Power. That's gonna hurt a bit. I was planning to use those, but we do get some tokens out of the deal. We have the Sword of Feast and Famine. Blowing up the Mana Crypt is actually a good thing, just because now opponent's gonna be even tighter on lands, and it'll keep them from blowing up our Cabal Coffers with the Wasteland. Oh my god, he didn't target the Cabal Coffers? That's impressive. What that probably means, though, is that the Marith opponent will blow up our Cabal Coffers at any cost, possibly. And that would not be great. So Marith coming into play, and it is a 6/6. That's a Woodfall Primus. Hopefully it doesn't go after the Cabal Coffers, because that's the one thing we're kind of leaning on right here. Oh my god, it shoots the Freyalies. I think we're going to untap with our Cabal Coffers. Best of all, between all of our opponents, there's only 2 open mana. So I'm going to try to make a motion to bring us to the end game. It's now turn 9. So let's see. Drop our Swamp. Use the Cabal Coffers. We'll get 5 mana out of that. Play the Sword of Feast and Famine. Equip the Sword of Feast and Famine. Unfortunately, that Woodfall Primus is going to give us some trouble, but potentially, can we kill that opponent? I'm going to play Sidisi. We get the Exploit trigger. We're going to sacrifice one of our tokens to find our Rise of the Dark Realms. We're going to swing into the Gave opponent since they're low on life. Even though they're not the most scary right now because they've been low on cards, the Woodfall Primus does give me some concern. So we get a Sword of Feast and Famine trigger. Our lands are going to untap, and that is a nice thing. So we get 5 mana, 6, 7, 8, and 9. Play Rise of the Dark Realms. All creatures in all graveyards come into play under our control. We're going to get a Farhaven Elf trigger and a Kothoped trigger because of the Walking Ballista, which came in with no toughness. We draw a Rogue's Passage, and we'll get a Swamp. Pass the turn. So we have 2 mana open we can use to either Kasali Pride Mage or Crypt Rats if we need to. Although the Crypt Rats would actually get a lot of our guys, so I don't know if that's where we want to be. This guy gives all of our elves Forest Walk, and we have a decent number of elves right now. At least more than I would have ever expected out of a mono black deck. Also this really big elf, which means that our opponents cannot block. Wolfcaller's Howl. What's this? At the beginning of your upkeep, create an X 2/2 green wolf token, where it's the number of your opponents with 4 or more cards in hand. Seems pretty good. Harrow for our opponent, we're going to get to draw more cards. We do need to be careful that Kothoped does not kill us, because that is something that can happen. Opponent's going to make a bunch of elf tokens. Marith is going to shoot our Crypt Rats. We're just going to have to let him go. Using the Crypt Rats right there doesn't make sense, so down it goes. And Marith's going to put a counter on itself. Oh yeah, that seems really good with Hardened Scales. And another Woodfall Primus coming into play. That is definitely going to hit something of ours. There's no way it doesn't. Going after the Sword of Feast and Famine. Yeah, that makes sense. All of our opponents are playing greens. Definitely a good choice. We still have the Cabal Coffers, though. If we can untap with that, we still have pretty good mana. Asceticism for the Gave. Gave attacks in at the Marith with their Woodfall Primus. Seems pretty good. So it's a good thing they decided not to block. If he blocked right there, they both get the Persist trigger and blow up more permanents, and that's also a bad thing. So we actually dodged a bullet right there. Back to our turn, finally. There's a Dark Ritual. Not exactly what we need, but not terrible either. Play a Swamp. I want to run this Grave Pact out there, but the second we do that, the Woodfall Primuses get sacked and start blowing up our stuff. So I don't think that's really where we want to be. I'm kind of wondering how much damage can we pump out. That's sort of the question on my mind. Got 11 flying right there, plus 7. That's 18 flying. 8 unblockable on the ground. So we get a bunch of mana out of our Cabal Coffers. So Dark Ritual, entwine this Promise of Power. See what other goodies this brings. Kind of looking to gain some life back. If we can get our Whip of Erebos, that would be really good. So opponent decides to wasteland one of Marith's lands. We draw another land out of the deal. We draw a Bantu. And Gave scoops, so that'll make life a little bit easier for us. That's a Massacre Worm. That's a pretty good thing. Unfortunately, we're really low on life, and Kothoped may kill us. And Woodfall Primus is unfortunately so big that Ugin can't hit it, so that's kind of a thing. Okay, so we can get rid of our Kothoped to the Ashnod's Altar, which we will do post-combat. Oh, we lost Forest Walk on our elves. That's bad news. So play the Lash Writhe, get a living weapon trigger, play Ashnod's Altar. We really need to kill Marith right here. Oh god, oh god. Oh, that's not what we wanted to do. Oh god, we wanted to equip the Lash Writhe. Bad, that is so bad. Oh, that was a punt, if there was ever a punt. I swear, I'm cursed with this deck. Get this far into a game, and on the brink of winning, and make a huge mistake, why not? So, post-combat, we need to sacrifice our Kothoped so we don't die to it. That gives us some floating mana. We're gonna shoot down the Hardened Scales, because that could potentially cause us some problems. Oh, we have a Bantu. We can get some life back with that. That'll be important. Unfortunately, that requires black mana, which we are all out of now. We'll play the Bantu. Because we have the Ashnod's Altar out, we can make sure that Bantu can attack and block, so that's a good thing. And pass the turn. That was an incredible punt, and I hope we can make our way out of it. Wolf Caller's Howl going on the stack. So the Freyleys got tired of waiting for the Marith opponent, and they scooped up the game. So after I did the math with the Gave opponent scooping, I don't know that we would have had lethal. We needed the 8 damage off of the Drove Elf guy there, and it needed to be unblockable, and if Gave, depending on when Gave scoops, it would have lost Forest Walk. So I'm not actually sure that the Lash Writhe, as much as I wanted to attack with the Lash Writhe, I don't know that we would have had lethal damage based on when the Gave scooped. So that was something to think about. Alright, so there it is, finally getting a win. Opponent timed out. I was very curious to see what they were going to do on their next turn. There is some chance that they killed us. They had the magic combination of cards. But I was feeling pretty good. We had a lot of toughness on our side. So I think we would have been able to block everything, even with all the trample from Kessig Wolfrun and Woodfall Primus. So this is Yahenni, the deck that I could not win with. Up to this point, had been completely defeated in like 6 games or something like that. Just 0-6. So, not the cleanest win. I'm not even 100% that we were going to win the game. Potentially, Freyleys could have had something, and Marith may have had something, and both together may have been able to get the last 8 points on us. I'm not sure, but we were able to get a win just by kind of hanging around in the game and making land drops and not dying. So, the completely defeated streak of Yahenni has finally ended, now 1-6. Anyway, that's going to wrap it up for today. If you guys like this video, as always, feel free to comment, like, or subscribe. Thank you for watching.